Good morning, everyone. We'll call the meeting to order. And at this point, Amanda, roll call, please.
Director Sani, Director Level,
Here.
Director Sabo,
Yes.
Director Miller,
Here.
Chair Garcia.
Here. Thank you. Director Miller, would you lead us in the pledge? Certainly. Joining the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So do we have any communications from any of the directors or any informational items at this time?
Yeah, I have one item. Myself and Director Sabo attended the Airport Council International North American Conference that was relocated to Reno. And, was a 4-day event. We found it very informative. And I think we'll be working on a report to submit for the next meeting, highlighting some of the things we learned. And always there's a big introduction of new technologies, which I always find interesting, but it was a worthwhile conference. I'm happy to attend that. But wonderful.
Thank you, Director.
As an attendant that it was reasonably well attended. There was more than ACI people expected, so much so they had to get a second hotel. So that was a good sign that the airport were anxious to get out and about. And number two, we're very cautious in their forecasts going forward. The FAA airports forecasts were on track. Cautiously up. As far as the vendors go, I would say that maybe about 3/4 of the number of vendors that typically attend these things were there, and it was good for a last minute change of venue from Delano.
Thank you, Director. Would any member of the public like to make comment on any non-agendized item at this point? Seeing none, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. The items of the consent agenda are in your packets, and I know you've all reviewed them. Would any member of the board like to pull a consent item?
I would, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to pull item 3.
Item 3 has been pulled by Director Sabo. At this point, can I have a motion to approve the remains of the consent agenda?
So moved.
We have a second.
Second.
Discussion?
One of us first and second.
Amanda, roll call.
Director Level,
Yes.
Director Sabo,
Yes.
Director Miller,
Yes.
Chair Garcia.
Yes. Okay.
Chair Curcio, you all are going to have to really speak into the microphone so I can hear you. Otherwise, I'm about half hearing you.
Thank you. I'll do that. Okay, Director Sabo, you have pulled item 3 for what reason?
I pulled it because I would like to request that the board chair or the board, I'm not sure the procedure to follow, delay the second reading of the ordinance, and I'll explain why. And since I opposed the first reading on the basis of the fee being, in my opinion, a little bit onerous for small businesses, and but since then I've been approached by some aeronautical businesses, small aeronautical businesses on the airport, and they indicated that they had not heard about this business license until the very last minute, and they had problems with it. Not from the standpoint of having a business license, but rather the two concerns. One, the construction of the rules may have had some impact on their way of doing business. business, particularly with the people that they engage that come from off the airport to assist them on their tasks. I guess you might call it subcontractors in some cases, or other assistance with special tooling. Number two, they were concerned about the fee, which was unclear to them whether it was $1,000, it was $100, whether it was what it was going to be, and by comparison to their experiences at other airports, they thought the fee was rather substantial. They were not opposed to a business license or any kind of rules associated with that. But then the bottom line is that apparently, and the distribution of the proposed business license rules and the attendant fee did not get distributed for comment to all or any of some of our attendants, and it's important that we give them a chance to comment and reconstruct the rules if in fact it's going to be detrimental to their business and detrimental to the airport. Number two, I think that the consideration of what the fee is still unclear to me. We did have some pass some direction to staff to make a $500 fee back across the board. There are still other fees that are referenced in the ordinance, and I think it needs to be clarified for the public, particularly those members of the public that are going to be affected by it. So what I'm asking is that we defer passage to print for until the next board meeting, and make sure that the distribution of the rules, the business license fee narrative get distributed to the tenants again if they have already been, and then give them a chance to comment on the proposed business license fee. So I'm still supportive of the business license and the fee, but we need to allow the public to weigh in on this whole thing. I don't think we've had a chance to do that.
Thank you, Director. Before we go to the board, is there any member of the public that would like to make comment on this item? Executive Director, I see we have one piece of correspondence from one of our tenants. Should that be read into the record, or how do we get it?
I would suggest that Director Sable read that into the record. He's the one that authored it, or he's the one that it was.
Would you do that, Director Sable, read the letter into the record?
Well, I think it was directed to the board. I'll read it, certainly, but it was directed to the board. It came out of a conversation I had with one of those tenants that I referred to. And this letter is directed to the board, and it's from Cordero Staub, and he is operates business on the airport as and rents as a subtenant of the Monterey Jet Center or Del Monte Aviation. My name is Cordero Staub. I own and operate Cordero LLC on the Southeast Ramp. I'm sorry I could not make it to the in-person meeting on November 17th. I spoke with William Sabo recently for me of the proposed business license fee. The airport has been discussing, will be voting on at the upcoming meeting. I would like to weigh in on this matter and address my concern of the proposed $500 business permit fee. I understand it's been changed from $1,000 to $500, but I believe that cost is still too high. Some surrounding airport fees are $0, and others are up to $150. I understand Monterey is a larger airport compared to the neighboring airports. Therefore, I feel a fee closer to $200 is more reasonable. I understand charging a fee to do a visit at the Monterey airport would not be uncommon, and can be a way to deter other shops from moonlighting to Monterey. However, charging those shops the same fee Monterey tenants will be paying is unfair. I propose that businesses who are not based at the Monterey airport would be charged a higher fee than those locally based. I hope my thoughts and concerns will be taken into consideration with the board during the deliberation of this matter. Thank you for your time. Cordero Strong, and after this letter was written, which was pretty recently, Mr. Stott called me and indicated that he was concerned also. He was confused. He happens to provide support services for corporate jets that come into the airport here. And typically, he provides that service by calling on specialty contractor, specialty maintenance personnel from San Jose who come down and will say work on landing gear or other more complicated things that where they have special tooling, and they do that rather frequently when there's a problem with a corporate jet. He was concerned that if in fact there was a business license fee and he brings them down, and these maintenance persons then bill the owner of the airplane for the services, whether or not he's going to be able to fill his obligations to the Jet Center and Del Monte Aviation. And because he knows, it was his opinion that these guys won't get a business license just to come down here 4 or 5 times a year. So he was confused as to how that would operate, and if it did operate where he couldn't bring them down without a business license, then it would be a severe impact on his business. I was a little concerned that from his standpoint, that if he's confused, other people must be confused on the, and I couldn't differentiate that from a shade tree mechanic that comes onto the airport from has a license, comes on, does an annual inspection on an airplane that's owned by somebody here based at the airport, and then leaves again. Where I think it was indicated that they would have to have a business license to come onto the airport and work for an individual owner. I wasn't able to explain that to him, but I think that's the kind of thing in the construction of the thing that is of concern to some of our tenants, and maybe more.
Director Sable, I'm going to count this as part of your time in board response. So if you have any other comments, I'd like to have.
Okay, I think we should defer this to the next meeting, and in the interim, redistribute the rules out to all of the tenants and indicate that they have the opportunity to respond.
Director Leffel?
Well, I'm having a hard time hearing. I think it's probably well, I don't know what it is. But let me just say this. I think we've had lots of time to discuss this. And I think these are in line with everything that I have seen in all my years of people paying for business licenses. Whatever Director Sabo was reading from, I could hear about half of it. Was that a letter directed just to Director Sabo, or was that, did we all have that?
It was distributed this morning and it was directed to the full board.
Okay, well,
But just distributed this morning.
okay, I don't know that I had it, so I haven't had the chance to read it. So was this person's concern that we didn't notice it right, or that it's too expensive, or that it's unfair? What were the concerns? And please, could somebody else please say it, because I have a hard time with Director Sabo's microphone and however his voice interacts with it.
Yeah, I'll be happy to do that, Director. His concerns were mainly price, as I read it, feeling that $500 was excessive. He's saying that it should be closer to $200, and he felt that would be more reasonable. That's the gist of the letter, and it was just dropped off to us. We have it this morning, so that's probably why you didn't get it.
We got it in the office last night after this.
Yeah. So, Director Leffel, I'm happy to quickly reread it if you'd like.
No, that's fine. I thought that's what he was saying, that it was too expensive in his opinion, but we also have the cost of our staff and the services that we provide on this. And I think that that was part of our issue, was trying to capture at least a portion of the costs that we have as we monitor these people. This is about the safety of our airport and the security of our airport and knowing who is on it. But it's also about not a gift of public funds to the businesses that are on our airport. So I support this going forward. I think it's a fair amount of money.
Thank you, Director. Director Miller.
Thank you. Executive Director here. We did notice all our tenants that this was coming. Did they get a copy of it?
We did. We provided copies via email. We had 2 public sessions that were likely attended, but we made one of those during the day and one in the evening to make sure that everyone had the opportunity to listen to what we were saying and to make comment. So,
Mike, you're going to have to speak up too. I'm sorry.
okay, no worries. Is
I
this
don't
better?
think the mask helps.
We had 2 public hearings or 2 public workshops. We mailed copies of the rules and regulations and the business license program to all of the appropriate tenants. The workshops were likely attended. We had 2. We had one during the day and one in the evening, so that we could give people the opportunity to attend. And then obviously we published this in the newspaper as required. So I think we've met the test of appropriate notice.
And to be clear, the amount of the business license is $500.
The rules or the rates and charges schedule called for $1,000.
But as a board action, we reduced that to 500.
Correct.
And the one letter that we did receive, he seemed pretty clear on what the amount is. He just doesn't agree with it.
Yeah.
It's a good point that Director Sabo brings up about people coming here temporarily, maybe for some emergency work.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure, thinking back on it, if we have some provisions for that, but this is always a work in progress, and as we encounter things that don't work or need modifications, I'm sure we can adjust those at a future time.
Yeah, and I am unclear as to what Mr. Staub is alluding to, but I can tell you that on a regular basis, Jet Center will be visited by folks out of San Jose on a very regular basis. Some of our fractional carriers like NetJets and FlexJets and others have contract services with maintenance providers off airport, and they provide some maintenance here. I think it's appropriate for the airport to know that they're here and they have the appropriate insurance, regardless of whether they're based here or whether they're in this.
Will they have to have a business license?
That is what the program calls.
Let's have Mr. Miller finish and
Sure.
backup questions. Go ahead.
I envision that there may be some emergency circumstances where they have to come to the airport right away, and would this hold them up, or would we be able to?
If it's an emergency situation, we certainly will make accommodation. There's no question about that. We're not in the business of policing this. We're in the business of cataloging it and ensuring that we have the proper insurance. If there's an emergency and aircraft is in need of immediate maintenance for whatever reason, we're not going to be there and say, show us your business license. It's just not how we're going to function.
Okay.
This is more catalog and provide insurance.
Well, my little math that I did on the back of a napkin here works out to $41.66 a month, which certainly seems reasonable. I know $500 is a little bit of sticker shock, but that is an annual fee, $41 a month. That's less than $2 a day. I'm sure that can be built into their cost for recovery and will be. But again, this is not a revenue generator for us. In fact, if anything, it's a revenue one-offs for us, but we're doing it to regulate what's been occurring on this airport without our knowledge. So we spent a lot of time as a board discussing back and forth on what the appropriate fee would be. And after much discussion, we decided on $500. That's why this is a second reading. This is a finished product. So I support moving forward with it at this time.
So I support moving forward as well. However, Director Sabo, would you like to make a motion?
Is this best done to defer it to a second meeting? Is that best done by motion?
Yes.
Yeah, I move that we defer the second reading of this ordinance to the next board meeting, and in the interim that the rules be redistributed to our tenants. It was indicating that they have the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Director. Do we have a second to Director Sable's motion? Seeing none, motion fails. I call for a motion to approve the remaining consent agenda item.
I'll still move.
Seconded.
Discussion? Amanda, roll call vote.
Director Curcio,
Yes.
I just want to say that there isn't a municipality or a government entity that I know about that does not charge for someone who's doing temporary business within its boundaries. And it's a cost of doing business. The company that Hal's run for all these years has had licenses in multiple places. And it's a decision that you make and you bill it to your client. So it's just a way of doing business. And I do believe this will make the airport a safer place and make it so that we do know who's operating within our boundaries.
Roll call vote.
Director Level,
Yes.
Director Sabo,
No.
Director Miller,
Yes.
Chair Curcio.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you. Let's move on to regular agenda items. So we can save Mr. O'Keefe some time. I'm going to rotate the 1 and 2 items and begin with item 2. Executive Director, you want to take it up?
Sure, happily. I'm pleased that Rob O'Keefe, the CEO, is that what CEO of the Monterey County Convention and Visitors Bureau, is with us today. We're developing a deeper relationship between the airport and CDB on a number of matters, marketing, air service development. And it's appropriate for Rob to come visit with you and tell you about what they're doing, what their recovery looks like, and the relationship between the airport and CDB. So without further ado, Rob O'Keefe.
Rob, were you?
Yeah, if you don't mind. Yeah.
Do a test on this microphone versus.
Sure. How would you like it?
Well,
Director Level?
Director Leppel, are you on?
Yes.
Can you hear me? This is Director Sabo. Can you hear me better now than when I was talking about the delaying the ordinance?
I can hear you when you set up against the microphone, Bill. You and Mike both have something in your tone that's hard for me to hear, but I did have an ear check last week and I don't need hearing aids, so. It's,
The question is, I
Congratulations.
changed the microphones and I'm at the same distance that I was before. And we're trying to figure out that we don't.
I think that microphone is more clear, yes.
Okay.
In full disclosure, Director Sabo and I both wear hearing aids. So Rob, take it away.
Thank you. And I guess I should check and make sure. Director Leppel, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Rob.
All right. Okay, well, I want to thank you, directors and Mike and staff, for the opportunity to come before you today and share a little bit about what we're doing. There's really 2 reasons I'm here today. One, to give you an update on how things look from a tourism standpoint, but there's a bigger, broader reason relative to where we're going in the future. And it's my contention, it's our contention at the CVB that we're not simply trying to get back to normal. We're trying to come back better than we were before. And we've got an opportunity to do that in a way that we haven't had in the past. So please take all of what I'm about to show you in that context. And I will go through this at a relatively good pace, but the information is that Mike has that. And if there's a need to, if you want to go into this deeper after I'm done today, I'm certainly happy to follow up with any questions. So let's see, I don't know what I'm doing. Here we go. So this chart, it's a little bit of an eye chart. Says it's saying a whole lot of things, but the most important thing is that this is a relative to 2019 where we stand. The blue line at the top is on overall travel. And you can see this is based on an index that we're still below, and some would say significantly below where we were before, because each percentage point counts a lot. If you look at the red line, that represents group business, which dropped significantly, more significantly than leisure. Most of the business that we've gotten out of the destination in the past year and a half plus has been leisure. Group is starting to come back. And we had it start to come back significantly just a few months ago, but then it dropped again. A lot of that we attribute to the Delta variant. And it's the main thing to know here is that it's inconsistent. And it will remain inconsistent for the foreseeable future. We don't expect group to come back in a full sense until 2023. Are you controlling that? Thank you. This gives you an idea of where we stand from an employment standpoint. Again, we are well below where we normally were. You can see to the left, occupancy and employment generally tend to run consistent pre-COVID. And then you can see what happened with the blue line, how it dropped significantly. It started to come back, but there's still a significant gap. Part of this is attributable to group business and international business. Hotels have just not been able to hire back up because they're not doing the type of catering business and the types of things you need for conferences when groups are here. So group is hitting us in a number of different ways. And one of those with employment, 27,000 people pre-COVID worked in hospitality, and that number is significantly less and remains so today.
What does occupancy current mean? That green thing? What is that?
Those green bars, that's where it is right now. And the yellow bar that it's next to is compared to 2019. So month by month, you can see green is what it actually was, and the yellow is what it was in 2019. And you can see the variations there. Again, I apologize for this being a bit of an eye chart, but you can also take a closer look at it after I'm done. Something that we've taken that was a big factor before COVID, and it continues to be a major factor for us, is that the competitive disadvantage that we have compared to those who we're competing with for travelers. And this chart shows what are each of these organizations, so our budget compared to the number of rooms that we have. We have 12,000 rooms in Monterey County, and that with our budget equates to about $644 per room from a marketing standpoint. If you look at Napa and Sonoma, they are respectively $1,300 and $1,100 per room. So they've got fewer rooms and a lot more to work with. And if you add up all the rooms in Napa and all the rooms in Sonoma, they still don't equal all the rooms that we have in Monterey County. So they effectively have fewer rooms and double the budget. And this is important because these organizations are all coming back as aggressively as they possibly can. I'm going to talk about some ARPA funding that might become available to us. They're also going after their own emergency funding. And so we have always, as a destination, punched above our weight. We have the physical assets, the landscape, the natural assets to be very competitive. But when it comes to spending to get groups, to get international visitors, and to get further away visitors, and that's really the gist of also why I'm here today, to talk about how we get people from further away, people who are flying in, they have significantly greater capability to do it. If you look at Santa Barbara, they recently, well, it's been a while now, but they've got air service from Southwest Airlines. They paid significantly for that. I talked to my counterpart over there and I said, what'd you have to do to get Southwest? She said, well, first we paid for their office space and make sure that they were able to get set up. And that was a couple $100,000. And then we put another couple $100,000 into promotional game planning for them. They're spending significantly to get that air service. And this is something that I'm talking about to our board of supervisors at the county level and our jurisdiction partners, our mayors and our council members, because they don't understand what it takes to do what you do and how we can work together to do what you do better. So I'll come back to that. To give you a sense of how business is coming back, this is a July to October productivity for group sales, business development, and it's coming back. There are leads coming in and there are bookings taking place, but like I said before, it's been very inconsistent. If you look at lead volume compared to 2019 pre-COVID, lead volume is at 65%. So much fewer leads are coming in. Our closure rate is at 23%. So that's the leads that come in that actually book business for the immediate or the long-term future. So it's coming back. It's just very inconsistent. And in the face of inconsistency, you have things like businesses not hiring back like we'd like them to. Director, did you have a question?
Yeah, what qualifies as a lead?
So that would be someone coming in and doing a request for proposal. So there's a process to it where they will come to our website or talk to our business development.
This would be like a group setting, not an individual that's making an inquiry on the internet.
Yeah, a meeting planner would come in and formally request proposals that from our hotels and from our conference centers.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so it's coming back, it's inconsistent, and we're staying very vigilant. I'm happy to say that last week was IMEX in Las Vegas, which was one of the largest meeting planner meetings in the world. And they had nearly 90% of their total attendance. And these are people globally, it's not just domestic, but it's globally in attendance. And that's where our sales teams and everybody else's sales teams across the country can go and meet with these planners to generate leads, to generate proposals and have conference. So it was a very successful program. We did some analysis just recently. And again, this speaks to bringing people in from further away. For groups, 44% of the leads that were sent both pre-COVID and at the same amount in 2021 were sent from regions outside of California that would require air travel to get to the destination. That's pretty good. That's not bad. But if you look at the ones that actually booked, 32% of those leads booked in 2019, and we're down to 24% in 2021. So fewer are actually booking. We've got to get those numbers up because we want those people coming in from further away. As you might imagine, the person who's driving here on leisure travel, who's driving here from the Bay Area or Fresno or Bakersfield, they're going to usually spend less money than the person who's flying here from Denver or Dallas or Philadelphia or further away. Same holds true for groups. If they come from further away, they tend to stay longer, do more, and spend more, which is something that we all want. We did some additional analysis. No, that's okay. That's the next slide. Earlier this year, on a leisure campaign that we launched in April, and we looked at, and we only target the people who are ready to travel. And we have some sophisticated ways to target travelers. There are, as you all know, a lot of people said, I'm just not ready to travel yet. Well, our messaging is going to just those people who said they're ready to travel. And then we looked at the ones who did actually travel. And you can see here again, the point that I made previously, the drive market trip spending profile is pretty significantly less than the fly market profile. Again, bringing people in from further away is something that's good for all of us. Well, one of the things that's new this year is Visit California has launched.
Yeah, could you go back one slide? On the, you indicated that bringing people in the flying versus driving in is good for all of us.
Yeah. Is
that because of the additional spending? Looks like possibly, and correct me on this, the additional spending is probably the cost of the airlines to get here.
So this is actually what they spent while they were here.
Spent while they were here.
Yeah, while they were here. Yes, I'm sorry to clarify that. But you can imagine if someone's spending more on an airline ticket to get here, it's a bigger trip. That's why they usually stay longer and do more and spend more. So for the first time ever, Visit California is targeting groups. This is a good thing for all of us. They're spending $4.5 million this year. They launched a new campaign called Meet What's Possible in California. This is something that Florida's been doing forever. This is something that states like Nevada, Arizona, Illinois, New York have been doing for a long time to various degrees. And we've needed California to do this. They've stepped up this year, and this gives us all a bigger umbrella to play under. So we're pretty excited about what they're doing at the state level. This is just a timeline of the various activations that they're going to do. They were at IMAX last week launching, and there are a variety of other things that they're going to be doing. The North Star Leadership Forum takes place in Pebble Beach. That's something that's been going on for years. It's a big opportunity for us, and we get a lot of people from around the country flying in for that. Okay, back to what we're doing. Visitor services. Now, some of you may know that we, because of COVID, we were unable to maintain the facility that we had for a visitor center at Lake El Estero. But we're engaging technology to make up for that. So on the right side, Visit Widget is an app that we're going to be launching in January that allows us, excuse me, to put trip planning capabilities right on people's phones, right where they're at. And we're excited about that because we're at our visitor center. The last full year before COVID, we had about 58,000 visitors over the course of the year. The Visit Widget, it's something that's been used by other destinations, reaches tens of thousands of people per month. And that gives us the ability to, when the people get here, plan a trip before they get here. And when they get here, connect them with restaurants, connect them with attractions, connect them with all sorts of different things, wine tastings, golf, etc. So we're excited about using tech to replace what had been bricks and mortar. And then we've also deferred our membership fee for this year for all our members. And as a result of that, we're starting to see a pretty good uptick in new members who want to be a part of what we're doing. And that all bodes well for the future as it relates to what we have as product offering. Something that we're doing more and more of, just to give you an idea of, how, you may see us out and about. We call them destination inspiration tables. So while we don't have bricks and mortar at El Estero anymore, we do go out during Labor Day. We'll be out during Thanksgiving, where we're in high traffic areas, handing out masks, handing out information, letting people know where they can go and what to do, spreading people out. Our goal is to get people to experience different parts of the county. So these are the high volume weekends where we're actually out in the midst of the community. And we also are doing more jurisdiction and destination engagement. And the reason I put this in here, these are the places where we take our team and we go out. We're in Moss Landing. We were just in South County at the beginning of October. We did a pretty big tour down there. We sat down and had lunch with the mayors of King City, Soledad, and Supervisor Lopez joined us as well. So we're getting out in these various areas. And this is important because I say this a lot, everything's connected. Everything you're doing, everything MST is doing, which I'm going to mention in a minute, the things that we're doing, we're all connected in a variety of ways. And so the things I'm talking about here, particularly with what we want to do with the airport, I'm talking about in these circles as well. And I just wanted you to be aware of that because I think it's important for all of us. Okay, so we launched a campaign called Now is the Moment in April. It's the first time we've ever done national television in the history of the CBB. We were able to do that because on the unfortunate side, when COVID first hit, I cut our staff from 38 people to 9, necessarily because that's what was required at the time. We were able to start to build back and we saved our powder, so to speak, so that when the time was right, and this was when Visit California picked their time to do a national campaign, we were able to do national television, reaching into those markets where we want to bring people back for. It was a one-time thing, but I don't want it to continue to be a one-time thing. And I think there's things that we can do. And again, we all have a stake. You all have a stake in terms of how we build up air service in this. So you go to the next slide. Just a little bit of detail on that because we relaunched the campaign in a different way in the fall. So in April, national campaign, national TV. The fall campaign, we reconfigured it and we are doing spot market TV. So we're doing spot markets in San Diego area, the Bay Area, Seattle, and you can notice that we're looking at those markets where we actually have air service. We want to expand on it. We're only able to do 4 markets, but we want to be able to do more in the future. And we'll talk about that. So next. We also did a new campaign called All Inspired. This just launched at IMEX to get groups here. And we're focused on how we're all in as a destination to make meetings successful. If you go to the next slide, there's a little bit more prettier pictures of how we're advertising to those group markets. And so far, the response to this has been great. We got a handful of immediate leads when we were at IMEX. And when we go to IMEX, it's not just the CVB. We were there with the aquarium, Monterey Plaza, with Bernardus, with Portola, and a variety of others. So when we go and do something like that, we're bringing everybody. Trade show floor, they bring their sales team, we set it up, we pay for it, and we get everybody in there. And this is what launched there. And a lot of people are excited about it in the meeting space. And these are just some more details, but we do work with the Monterey Conference Center, do a dedicated program with them. And I'd like to thank Director Curcio for the air cover that might have been necessary when our agreement went before council last night, and that worked out well. So we do a dedicated plan for the city of Monterey. They are one of the highest payers in terms of investing next to the county, and we have a dedicated program that supports the conference center. This is something to look at later, but I wanted you to see it and have this information. This is from Visit California on the international side, and it basically shows the countries on the left. The green are the things where they're most active, and the red is where they're less active. And you can see over the time span, international travel is not expected to come back until 2025 fully, but some markets are coming back faster than others. And those markets include Mexico, China, Canada, the United Kingdom, and then it starts to get a little bit more red with some of the others. So it's coming back, it's just not there yet. And one of the things, the perceptions that I fight a lot is that we have elected officials who just strolling down the street, see people checking into a hotel or a full restaurant, and they think, well, tourism's back. It's not, and the mix isn't right, and we still got a lot of work to do. To help us with that, the county has designated some dollars from their ARPA allocation and asked us for a proposal on how we could use a boost. In this instance, we're talking about $1.8 million spread over 3 years to expand what we do, existing programs, and create new programs. So we came up with a 6-part process that's allowing us to leverage the collaboration that we've experienced with new partners or partners where we've had some partnership with, like the ag community, but not really to the degree that we could. So this is essentially a B12 shot to our marketing program if these dollars become available to us. And so the first part is boosting countywide promotion, also working more aggressively with Wine Country and the Vintners and Growers Group. The third part is to focus on groups and meetings, and there's a variety of things we can do in that space. And if you go to the next slide, a few other areas, some we've done more in and some we've done less in. Agritourism and heritage, we've done some, but there's a big opportunity there. Air service development is why I'm here today. We would like to get additional dollars out of this proposal and dedicate it to air service promotion. And that's to help and working with Mike and his team to lure additional or new, but even also bolster underperforming. So if Alaska Air is getting a little bit uneasy about Seattle, then is there something we can do? We don't have the kind of budget to do a lot of that. This would help us a great deal if we can get these dollars from the county so we can plug in and plan. And I know that the consultant's going to be here in January, and I'd like to have this wrapped up so we can actually sit around a table and talk about real dollars we have to work with for our future. And then sustainable tourism and ecotourism are also something that's very important to our residents, as well as our elected officials, and we'd like to boost that as well.
Director.
Yeah, what is, back one slide, down at the bottom of the air service development, it says MCVGA, what is that? Is that you?
That's Vintners and Growers Association, and in the past, and then there's also the Monterey County Hospitality Association. what I think Mike and your team here has done a really good job is creating a lot of partnerships. And when we talk with the vintners and growers and others, they have a stake in this as well. So they want to be at the table when we talk about these things. Maybe we're meeting with the consultant, but they feel they have a stake in it, and I think they do. So they want to be a part of the discussion.
I never heard of VGA before.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The wine people. And then lastly, we are in February going to embark on a strategic plan for the Convention and Visitors Bureau. So we're going to be looking out for the next 3 to 5 years, and we're going to be looking at everything from what we're called. How many people know what a CDB is? I do, because I work at one, and you guys are in the business, but there are other ways that CDBs are being more like a business. And while we're a nonprofit, I think that we are a business in business to drive business. And so we're going to talk about all sorts of things, how we're looked at, how we operate, and most importantly, these partnerships. The ARPA thing is just to get us started. If we can get those dollars, it'll give us a boost. But like I said, I want to be doing national campaigns every year. I think there are ways we can get there. And I think there's a lot to be gained by doing so. So this strategic plan is going to be involve everybody. And I hope to be back here with all of you, and of course, working with Mike on a day-to-day, month-to-month basis about what does a strategic plan for tourism growth look like from your perspective, and how can we work on that together. And that's it. I hope I didn't take too long, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Rob. Really appreciate it. Great presentation, by the way. Very, very well done. And I think what would be helpful is if you could get Mike a copy of that and he can distribute it to the board members, so we actually have it.
We have it. We got it last evening. We'll get it.
Great. So we're going to have
Yeah.
Terrific. Before we go to the board, is there any comment from the public? Seeing none, let's start with the board, and let's start with Director Miller.
Thank you. And thank you for your presentation. Thank you for the change of direction. So I've been on this board for 15 years. And, what we had experienced in the past was a concentration on vehicle traffic. And I think we were missing the big picture. And I have to say that this airport, going back 15 years, I mean, the focus has always been, where can we go to service the people that live here? And it's not capturing the people that so much have come to Monterey. And for the first time in my 15-year history here, I think we are very well situated right now. We've got 4 daily flights from Phoenix, and the possibility of a third from Dallas happening. I mean, who would have thought? In Seattle, these are great hub airports that can bring a lot of traffic here. So I welcome our partnership with you, and I thank you for putting this together. Thank you.
Happy to do it.
Director Sabo.
Yeah, good presentation. That was like drinking out of a fire hose.
Yeah.
Some of us are more familiar with it than others, but I kind of applaud this changing direction in terms of this airport here. When you get these leads, how many of them, or what portion of those requests for proposal? But that's a term I understand. But maybe that's what it is, request for proposal.
That's it, exactly.
Local hotels, venues. How important is it in those requests for proposals from those folks? There's so many of them that there be an airport nearby, as opposed to a San Francisco or San Jose. How important is it? And you might have to just speculate on that.
No, that one I have the exact answer. It's usually in the top 3 most important things. Many times airport accessibility is the #1 thing. We win or lose business a lot of times because we're either too difficult to get to, which is sometimes the perception, or we're easier than you thought to get to. And so the air service is actually very important.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I'm so glad to hear that.
We just got to continue to push the messaging that it's easy. We are one stop away from any major destination in the country. And I'm telling you things you already know. We've got to continue to push that out there. And we compete against our challenge is we compete against for a certain kind of business, San Jose, San Francisco, San Diego, and they're all known. Of course they have airports too, because everybody know that we have an airport and how easy it is to get here. And sometimes it's a little bit more difficult than getting to if you're going to San Diego, but it's a lot more worth it once you get here. So that's what it makes, that's the way these new campaigns and things that we're doing are really going to push those messages.
Okay, good answer. And so when these responses are generated from hotels or whoever to respond to the leads, do you participate in developing the response, or is it just hotel by hotel?
We sometimes we collect them all, so they'll all come up. Like 6 hotels will respond, and we'll make sure that the meeting planner gets all 6 of those. So we have a hand in it, but they create their own proposals because they're competing with each other.
Okay, and this is, I'm speaking from a position where shameless self-promotion.
Certainly.
But what does CBB do? What do the hotels do to emphasize the fact that there's an airport here, as opposed to you don't have to go to San Jose to get here?
Now, we do things like we will have do press fans or have journalists come out. We make sure they fly into here and they get to see what we have, and then they go back and write about it. So there's magazine articles about it. We do in our ad campaign, we feature our map. We have a map about how easy it is to get here coming from the various destinations. So it's central to what we do, and it's definitely a part of what the hotels do.
Does it get into the actual response to the request?
Absolutely, because that is so important for the planners.
Okay, and do you have any sense? Obviously, you have a lot of data. You know a lot about the people who come here. You know how much they spend, where they spend it. Do you have any sense for how many people are coming here via Monterey Airport versus San Jose versus San Francisco?
We looked at that a few years ago in our visitor profile study, and I don't have that data in front of me right now, but it was a tiny fraction coming directly, and there's a lot coming from the other. So that
The other being
San Jose or San Francisco.
But things have changed dramatically in the last couple of years with the addition of Seattle, Dallas, especially.
Absolutely.
You know, that would be interesting information.
Yeah, we're intending to do a visitor profile study again, probably kicking off in the spring. We didn't want to do it in COVID heavy time because everything's so crazy, but yeah, that's one of many questions I have. What does a visitor profile look like now? How are they getting here? I would expect that it's changed dramatically, as you suggest, Director. I'd like to see the data on that, so we're going to go after it.
I hope you do. It's really important.
It gives us a benchmark.
Here. I understand them being kind of parochial about the whole thing, but it's 5 minutes to your hotel from here, and 2 hours from here.
I'm here, Director, to tell you that it's not parochial. It's something that your interests and our interests are overlapped.
Okay, good.
And we
this may
recognize
be a tad bit off the topic of what we're dealing with here, but I was given that you are very active as a county function here. How does all this business about the attractions and hotels, the availability of conference center and all that, how does that affect the Salinas and the Salinas Valley? You know, what are there attractions that you're trying to direct people to in the Salinas Valley and in Salinas, as well as our obvious Monterey Peninsula?
Absolutely. That's one of the things we want to knock down is that lettuce curtain and the perception that it's all the peninsula and it's nobody else outside of that, which is it's not true. And here are the types of things that we do. Part of the ARPA dollars that we're getting for agritourism, for wine country promotion, will go into promoting what's already there, but there needs to be some development because there's not a lot in South County. There's more than people would think. And I know when I did South County tour, we went to 3 different wineries who are going to start doing concerts. The Shalom Winery is talking about putting in a small amphitheater, and that type of development that they're going to invest, we want to put marketing over. We're working on the leisure side. We just had the California Economic Summit here last week. And that took place at the conference center. So our team gets involved with the event producers. And we say, hey, we've got an idea. Why don't you do one of your events? Because they do evening events, wine receptions, things like that. We did it at the Steinbeck Center. So we helped get them set up there. So they took the buses, they got on the transport and went from downtown Monterey all the way out to Salinas so they could experience the downtown experience and the Steinbeck Center. So we're constantly spreading people out. When we were down on the wharf, we have a table set up during Labor Day and you get big crowds in there. People are looking for, well, what else can I do? Well, we're telling them you can go out to the River Road, you can go out to Carmel Valley. So we're actively, it's a key strategy for us trying to get people to spread out. But we also need in South County, we need hotel development. So that's why we're working with Soledad and King City. I'm talking to their mayors. They're talking to hotels that might build out there. It's a heck of a lot easier to build in South County than it is on the peninsula. So our growth for our future, and this is the strategic plan, what type of hotel development can we create in South County down that way? Because we're getting our butts kicked by Paso very badly because they've got a lot of hotel product and they're building out attractions and we need both. So when we think in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to need as a destination to be viable for that continued development.
Okay, thank you for that. And I'm interested in what goes on with the rest of our county here. Let me share an idea that I said came to me online, and I thought it was very clever, and you probably heard of it too. It was the state of Nebraska had a little booklet that said, here, go and look at these venues out here. And you check them off, you know, and then you could send it in and say, I went there, or maybe you registered when you were at this place and you got the prize. But it was a little booklet that basically said, here's all that we have to offer, you know, venues and all that sort of stuff. Have you heard of that?
Oh, absolutely. And as someone who started my tourism marketing background in the state of Missouri, I know what it's like to do those types of tactics because there was once a time it's harder to get people out there, but now they're looking for those things that are off the beaten path. So yes, I'm familiar with what Nebraska did. It was a great idea because it gave them the map and kind of a quest.
Is that possible to do a mini version of that from here to see all that?
The visit widget, the app that I talked about, is a perfect forum for that because we can start to connect dots for people. And if they hit all those dots, they get something.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.
Director Lovell?
Thank you. Rob, thanks. That was a great presentation. I love data, so it speaks to me. Couple of things, just as an idea, maybe we do a little tag on everything that says add a half a day to your vacation, fly Monterey. Because by the time they drive here and drive back to wherever they caught a plane and go through the TSA, it's at least a half a day lost.
Oh yeah, I love that.
I'm been involved with economic development forever, and I think one thing that we have not done a good job of, either us at the airport or you, is to really incorporate the smaller events into a lot of our advertising. And things like Sea Otter Classic, I've actually been on the plane coming in from Phoenix twice when that's going on, and a couple of times also when the Big Sur Marathon. And the planes are packed with young, medium age, healthy people who are coming here for those types of experiences. So I think a lot of our success could be kind of like with Car Week, where we add on different days with that, but add on different days of activities and make people really aware of what else they can do in the area while we've got those types of events going on. I know you all are brilliant at what you do, but if we can do anything to help with that, I think that we're, as a board, really willing to do that.
Well, and I appreciate that. And I can tell you now, we're trying to bring more dollars to the table from various sources, whether ARPA or other, so we can sit down and have a conversation with the airports. I did a lot of this in my previous destination, airport development. If you don't have money in your back pocket, you are completely at the whims of the airlines. And I know you all know this very well. What I'm saying is with this attitude that we have as a CDB is being bolstered. We've got to come to the table with dollars. But when you do that, if we have dollars, the thing that I would ask, and Mike already knows this as well, what can the airport or what can the airlines do? When you're on those planes full of people coming here to experience our destination, I want something in their hand or something on the video. And I don't want to go through their ad agency or their ad sales department. I want to come together and how do we do a co-promotion so that the people coming here for the Sea Otter Classic know about our golf or know about our wine. I don't want them coming here for just one thing. I want them coming here and doing more. So we'll be looking for help to get the airlines to come to the table with more promotional opportunities.
You know, years ago, way before I came on the board, I know Tom Greer had a little funny thing that he used to say with our Denver flight, which was ski in the morning and tee off in the afternoon.
Yeah, I've heard that.
And I don't believe, and I went one time to a really good marketing conference for airlines. And one of the things that I was able to do was to talk to the people from much larger airports who have solely dedicated marketing people. But I asked San Diego and Denver, would they be willing to do co-op advertising with us, both through their convention bureau, and they are willing. So it's probably a matter of us reaching out to some of our partners in our peer group and doing some things that we could kind of piggyback off of both of them. We know that we don't have a ski resort, so therefore if we advertise with Denver, it's no skin off our backs, really. It's just a matter of being able to maybe get people to understand that they could do 2 activities in one day.
Sure, and yeah, we're not competing with them for snow, and they're not competing with us for ocean. We've got one, they've got the other. Why not? Yeah, I think that's great. I think that type of outreach, they're responsive to it. We've got to show up again with dollars in our pocket to be able to put something on the table. And if these things work out, we will.
Okay, well, I thank you. And I thank Mike for reaching out and getting more involved. This is obviously a piece of our business because we have a lot of businesses. And I can tell you that in the top 4 reasons why businesses sometimes will relocate to a region is because it has a commercial airport. So it's important to the overall job market here in our community. And I think that that's important. And I think our community needs to understand that. It's about all jobs and it's about all parts of the economy. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So I have to say that the relationship today between our airport and convention visitor bureau is the strongest and best it has ever been in all of my 25+ years involved in hospitality on this peninsula. And that is due directly to mainly, trust me on this, people, to the 2 people that are right here next to each other in this meeting. And that's because Rob and Mike get it. And Rob gets it. And it's terrific because I remember before your time, when the Convention Visitors Bureau was partnering with San Jose Airport and running ads on local TV for San Jose Airport. And I cringed every time I saw them come onto the TV. Fortunately, we are now in a completely different direction. And to have these 2 groups on the same page is really very, very important. And it's wonderful to finally have that relationship. So we have to do everything we can to make sure that it continues to grow and foster it. And that's exactly what we will be doing. This was Director Sable and I serve on the Air Service Committee. This was a terrific presentation, and I know that Bill received a lot of information today that he's been looking for a long time.
Absolutely.
And that's really outstanding. A couple more things quickly. the best ad that I ever saw, I believe, was before you came on board as far as connecting the airport. And it was with the CBB and with the airport. And it showed, well, actually, it showed my kid hitting a tee shot on the first hole that we're doing a Seiko. It was a TV commercial. And it said, if you flew into Monterey, you'd already be on the first tee. That's the kind of stuff, really powerful and something maybe we should take a look at. The one, I'm trying to be helpful when I say this. I've been for many, many years trying to not use the words lettuce curd. I don't like it. It's a perception that we have been trying to get rid of for 35, 40 years, going back to when Ana Caballero was the mayor of Salinas. So I try, when we have those discussions, I try never to use the word lettuce curd because it's a perception that we don't even want to talk about anymore. Lastly, and this has nothing to do with the CBB, but it's a matter of fact. And when we were at your year-end meeting this year, which was terrific, by the way, really, really well done. Having Carolyn Bethesda there certainly was a big plus. By the way, when you had Carolyn, you automatically got Ted Senior, so
yeah,
which was a really good thing. We have to continue to, and the fact that Visit California is doing what they're doing, I don't think it's ever been done before. And that's really another part of it that I think we have to continue to foster. But what I was going to say is, again, this is not your bailiwick, but it's something that we're all involved in. To get to where we want to be, and your tagline that day, which was outstanding, was "What if?" And to get to what if, we're going to need to have a sustainable long-term water supply. Because without that, it's virtually impossible for hotels to operate the way they're going to need to operate for a bounce back the size that you want to see happen in your own. So it's just something you have to keep in mind. Thank you so much. This was really an outstanding presentation. Well worth the time, and we appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule. Thanks, Rob.
well, thank you, Director. I appreciate your kind words and the note of advice on the lettuce curtain. I'll take that out of my vernacular. And yes, and like I said, everything's connected. We're not at the front of the table when it comes to water, but we're a voice. And like I said, everything is connected. And if you think about what if means what if, think about the possibilities. If we can get it together as a destination, all of these things are connected. Water isn't just something that's taking place in a vacuum, it's taking place and it affects all of us, including our business, our industry, our employees. So whatever help we can provide, whatever data that you need on anything, we're available and we're going to go get more. So when we do the visitor profile, you can bet I'll be bringing that back to you to answer some of those questions that we all want the answers to. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. Executive Director, you want to tee up the next item?
Absolutely, my pleasure. First of all, thank you, Rob. Appreciate it. And we'll talk to you sometime soon. The next item is the delivery of the fiscal year 2021 audit report. Online is Brandon Young from LSL, our audit firm. They've been with us, I believe this is their third year or fourth year. Brandon will walk you through the audit itself. We're very pleased with the audit, as you will see, is a clean audit, and Brandon will highlight some of the things that we're working on as it relates to some of the gas fee programs that we are now complying with. So turn it over to Brandon if you're ready.
Thank you.
This is not. So, and obviously,
Okay, we have a technical problem. Can we take a quick break?
Sure, let's take 5. Okay, welcome back, everyone. We may have a little bit of technical difficulty as we move through this. If it happens, we're going to just use the old-fashioned method of using our hardcover that we have in front of us. And for the ease of the of the board members, if in fact we do have those issues, if you could just let us know what page you're on, we'll turn to that in the book. So go ahead and start off.
Yeah. Brandon, as you're reviewing it, if there are specific pages that you want to project, just make sure you call out the page number. So if we can't project in the room, they'll at least be able to follow in their hard copy.
Sure. So do you want me to call out the PDF page number, or?
What they have in front of them is the hard copy of the audit report itself.
Okay, I will do my best to go slow and make sure we're all on the same page.
Sure.
Good morning, everybody. Nice seeing you all again. I've met all you at this point, but as a formality, as Mike mentioned, my name is Brandon Young. I'm a partner with LSL CPAs and the partner on this audit engagement. This is, I think, our third year. As Mike said, I'm kind of losing track. The last 2 years seems pretty much like a blur, but third year with the airport, with the district, performing the annual audit. Another successful year, as Mike mentioned. We've established a good working relationship with the district, with Mike and Tim and their team. Very forthcoming with information and very ready when we come out to do the audit. And we appreciate the kind of efficiency that they work with and just the helpfulness to get this done and get it done timely, so it's useful for you all. So I'll kind of just briefly touch on the audit process overall, as you're familiar with, and then go through some of the letters and just a couple of changes that you'll see in this year's report, and then answer any questions that you have at the end. So our interim audit this year, as usual, kind of was in May and June. We did it again, 100% virtually, just like this. We've gotten on a pretty good routine, being able to get these audits completed over Zoom and Teams and different file sharing systems that are pretty effective, and a lot of clients seem to like it and actually not have us there in person, kind of just grilling them for a week. So during May, what we're doing is we're getting an understanding of the processes surrounding specific to financial reporting, how the district processes cash receipts, how they process cash disbursements, track capital asset activity, grant activity. Obviously now getting an understanding of some of the CARES funding and other funding that's coming down the pipe, due to COVID. Making sure that's recorded properly, reflected correctly, and then we're using that to do a risk assessment back during the summertime to get ready for the year-end audit. The year-end audit occurs in September for you guys, where we're actually testing balances. We are pulling grant agreements, we're pulling checks, cash receipts, testing capital asset activity, making sure things are recorded in the proper period, are classified correctly. Things of that nature, and then it culminates into the report you see in front of you with a lot of back and forth and kind of teamwork to get it to this point. So part of the packet, there's letters that summarize the audit and kind of the results, so I'll walk through those. So the first one is going to be, so I'm looking at a e-version, so the PDF page is 39, so it's right after the last presentation. This document doesn't have a title on it. It just starts with a date. It says October 18th, 2021. So I'll give you a second to, if it's in order that I've got, it's basically right after the proof of publication I'm looking at is the page before it.
What was the page number again?
So in the electronic version, it's page 39. I don't see page numbers on this e-version that I've got. So if there's page numbers on yours, it would.
Carl, it's the very first page of the audit, the very first page.
On the first one, you'll see the first bold section says significant audit findings and other issues.
It actually is a standalone document letter.
Nice. Yeah. Oh, the letter, okay. Got it.
Is it down at the bottom? Does it say significant unusual transactions? Is that the list?
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one. All right. Do we all have this one?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, great. So this is what's called an audit communication letter. This is a summary letter of kind of some of the results of the audit overall. A couple of things I'll point out on this letter. So the first if you go third paragraph down, it talks about note 7, and it's talking about GASB 87. So there was a new accounting pronouncement that is for most agencies going to be in effect next year, fiscal year 2022 for the district. We implemented it early because you guys are organized and kind of ready to do these things and usually like to early implement these accounting standards. So for those of you familiar with the private accounting world and the FASB world, the lease standard changed last year for private companies with the intent of showing obligations or potential future revenues that any agency has outstanding and putting them on the face of the financial statements where they weren't recorded that way previously. So what it results in is I'll show you in a second, there's going to be a couple of new lines on your financial statements that were not there previously, and I'll explain kind of why those are there and how it's changed. So that was the primary accounting standard that was implemented this year that impacts the district and will impact most government agencies. The indented paragraph that's been there in years past, a few more paragraphs down, talks about the pension liability and the OPEB liability, letting you know that once again, these are estimates that are developed using actuarial assumptions, projecting investment rate of returns, changes in mortality rates, inflation adjustments, and these numbers change from year to year. That really are not because of anything a government agency has done. It's really how CalPERS performs on investments and things that they decide to change. So kind of a moving target. They're accurate as of what they've calculated for June 30, 2020, but they swing back and forth for a variety of reasons. On the next page of that letter, I'll point out there's a section called the corrected and uncorrected misstatements I wanted to just touch on. So over the course of an audit, when you come across something that either needs to be reclassed or maybe is just slightly off, but it's not a dollar amount that would be considered a significant material amount, it's put as a past adjustment, meaning that it's something that we found that we are kind of passing on correcting. So it's not necessarily reflected in this year's financial statements. This has to do with capital asset activity that if Tim is here, it looks like he is, I'll have him touch on. It essentially was a reclass that was items found in previous years. And Tim, if you wanted to just touch on it real quick, since I see you pop your screen up.
This particular item was actually tracked as a project, and it related to the State Water Resources Control Board expenditures for doing water testing on the field. It technically was not an asset, and because it was tracked as a project and originally in CIP, it basically was a capital asset or being included in the assets, capital assets. We made the decision to expense it as we properly should, and our classification was moving it into the Planning and Development Department. After speaking with Jocelyn, the manager on the engagement, because it had been a capital asset or recorded as a capital asset, it would have required 2 years of restatement. And we talked about different options. And so the actual decision was to recognize it as a loss on capital assets in the financial statements and not to adjust the prior year's numbers. So again, it was in our financial statements. The net overall for the financial statements was correct in total, but it was simply a presentation. So that's what this $133,000 relates to.
So Director Sable has a question.
Yeah, I don't know whether this is at the end of your presentation on the management letter, but will you be describing when we get to note 7 in the financial statements, will you be discussing more GASB 87 impact? In other words, the differences as it impacts our financial statements this year as opposed to previous years?
Yes, yeah, I'm going to go just kind of go in order of the document, and I was going to touch on those for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and just be aware, Brandon, that we can no longer see you in the room. You are on Zoom, but
Okay.
technology just gave out again.
Yeah, technology is a gift and a curse, so we'll make it through. So, but thanks for letting me know that. So moving through this letter, the next couple of sections, if there were ever any disagreements with management or any issues that arose that basically they were consulting other accountants or other firms or not liking what we were telling them, or we couldn't kind of come to a consensus on how to record a transaction, you would see it here. We have never had any issue with the district with that, and I don't foresee that happening in the future. It's very uncommon. But if that were to come up, it would be disclosed here. On the following page, you'll see a section that says other audit findings and issues discussed with management. So there is something in here this year having to do with journal entries. So I see you guys pointing, so I'll make sure you guys are on the right page.
So Brandon, hang on a second. Director Sable has another question.
I have a question on other audit findings or issues discussed with management. Can you respond to my question?
Yeah, I was that section that
Okay, I'm not even sure you're still there because we can't see you anymore. But
I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
Under the other audit findings and issues discussed with management, we had a thing called manual journal entries. Could you, one, describe what manual journal entries are versus any other kind of entries, like automatic or adjusting entries? I'm not familiar with manual journal entries. Number two, why are we doing manual journal entries that are unsubstantiated here? I'm not trying to not doing sleuthing work, but it seems, if I understand manual journal entries, somebody just kind of corrected something in the general ledger and without any authorization or any supporting information. Could you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Sure. Yeah, I will touch on that, and then I will let Tim kind of address it as well. So what this is we do a test every year where we're testing journal entries. So how usually these accounting systems work is there are things that are automatic in the sense as when you process accounts payable and cut checks, and when you process payroll, they're automatically posted to accounts in the system through your ERP system. So a manual entry is something that somebody has to go in and set up an entry, usually to reclass accounts or record something that needs an adjustment. And it typically is initiated by one account and approved by another. So as part of our test, we do a random selection of entries, and we're looking for evidence of proper approval and that the entries were, proper business purpose and nothing was out of the ordinary. So what we had this time is of the 28, there were 5 entries that there just wasn't evidence of initials for review. They were reviewed as part of sending us the trial balance. And we reviewed the entries. The entries were accurate, and it was just kind of a technicality that there wasn't evidence of approval on those entries. So we have to disclose it in that sense as kind of just a control recommendation. So that is why this is here. And then I will let Tim kind of address that also.
It was an interesting time. When we're closing the financial statements, Director Sabo, we actually have a laundry list of about 30 entries that we go through every close. Some of these are recognizing, for example, depreciation, which isn't an automated process. Some of it is redistributing expenses, for example, utilities or credit card expenses that come in a card and have to go to different places. So there's an insurance distribution where we prepay insurance. So again, we have a laundry list every month that we go through and we validate how, number one, an expense was recognized, distributed, and verified. In our exuberance during the audit, we've got a good working relationship with LSL, and we try to be very responsive because time is money, as they say. And we, for the entries, they were reclass entries that are typically one of the last things that you do in the closed process. And this particular time, we never really consider the financials settled until we get close to closing the entry or closing the audit, because there's lots of things that happen. It takes 45 days after the end of the month typically to get the books closed. And when you're doing year end, you do a lot more. So in our haste before having things finally reviewed, we quickly copied 4 of those entries, scanned them, and sent them to the auditors without me putting my initials on them. And again, it was our exuberance to deliver what they requested, and we try to be responsive. The one during interim, I can say that was flat missed, and that was something that I'm working with the team here, and we're basically not going to have that happen again. where we've now put in a process in place that anything that is going to be sent to the auditors has a second review on it. So again, good catch by the auditors, our mistake, and fortunately, it's nothing material.
Okay, thank you, Tim and Brendan. It has the potential for an impact on our bottom line as well as on our balance sheet, and that's why it was of some concern to me that it wasn't signed off by anybody or there wasn't supporting information. Apparently, from what you said, Tim, we now have procedures in place to catch this before we finalize and do a closing. Is that correct?
Well, that procedure was always in place, Director Sabo. What happened is, again, in haste, we responded to the auditors before it completed the review process. And again, we now won't do that. We will now, when they respond, we'll have to do a second check on everything to make sure that it's actually completed the full cycle.
Okay, thank you. That's the end of my question.
Thank you. Move on.
Okay, sounds good. So that is everything I'll touch on this letter. I'm going to move in now to the actual financial statements themselves. In my document, it's the independent auditors report is PDF page 47, and the financial statements, it's just page 1. It should be the title says independent auditors report.
That's a very fun.
Right after the index.
Yep.
Yeah, I see that.
Brandon, do you want to touch on the last page of the letter real quick? It talks about the GASBs.
Sure, I can. So I'm kind of, as we touched on, so the last page of the previous letter talks about accounting pronouncements. So GASB 87 is the leases. That was the primary one that is impacted this year that I'll touch on in a second, how that changed kind of the financials. GASB 84 was not of any impact to the district. If you were holding money in a fiduciary capacity for any agency, it would be reflected here. And then the ones coming up in future years, as of right now, don't have any major impacts. The one that recently came out that doesn't impact you guys either is they're changing the term. If you're familiar with cities and counties that do a comprehensive annual financial report, you can no longer use the term CAFR because it was deemed to be offensive to South Africans, I think. So it's now going to be termed an ACFR is one that is just kind of something that I've been letting people know. So, and then I'll jump to the leases here in a second. So I'll touch on the opinion letter first, if you guys are there. The independent auditors report is kind of all the letters are important, but this is probably the most important one. Basically, the district received an unmodified opinion this year, which is the opinion that you want, meaning that the numbers and disclosures you're seeing in the document itself have been verified and substantiated with supporting documentation, analytical procedures, and there's nothing we had to adjust or basically weren't unable to give an opinion on that we felt did not have supporting documentation. So the letter itself, the order has changed. If you are really very detailed and notice the change of the order, previously the opinion section was like the third paragraph, now it's first. The AICPA world wanted to make the opinion first. They felt that's the most important part of the letter. So the content itself is relatively the same as in years past, just the order of what you're seeing has changed slightly. On the second page, a new paragraph that you'll see the 5 bullet points on the second page. They're disclosing more information as to what we are doing as part of the audit in the opinion letter itself that we haven't in the past. It's things that we have always done, but now it's just in writing. So things like exercising professional judgment, maintaining skepticism, obtaining a thorough understanding of internal controls, but not giving an opinion on it, evaluating accounting policies for appropriateness, and then making sure that agencies can continue, without a substantial doubt or any going concern for the next 12 months, are just things that have always been part of the audit process, but now they're here in writing with this new accounting standard. The rest of this letter, I can touch up. There's separate letters for the CFA and for other reports that I'll touch on separately. So I wanted to point out on the balance sheet now, it's going to be of the financial statements itself. Now it's going to be page 25, where you'll see the assets, liabilities. This is where I want to point out where the change is for the leases, and then I'll go to that footnote too.
Statements of net position,
Correct. Yep, that's the one.
25. Got it. Yeah. Okay, you got it.
Great. So the change that was impacted due to the GASB 87 I was mentioning, you'll see it on here. So in the top section, you're now going to see a line that says leases receivable with an amount of about 12.6 million for 2021. And then there is a corresponding section below under the deferred inflows of resources that is a matching amount. So what you're going to notice is that these dollar amounts are the same. So there's not actually any impact to net position per se, because it's really grossing up your balance sheet. So it ends up being a disclosure that's showing you that the value of, now I want to touch on, these are not all your leases. So any leases regulated by the FAA are excluded from this accounting pronouncement. So those are not included in that 12.6 million. Those are mainly your concessionaires and other leases. So 12.6 million is essentially calculated as the present value of all those leases outstanding for concessionaires that are paying the airport, and you guys are the lessor. So the value of those at June 30, 2021 is 12.6 million. And previously how those were recorded is they were just recorded as income as the amounts were paid, same as somebody would pay rent. So they're changing that now to put these on the balance sheet to show the value kind of over the life of the lease. And the result is you have the two new lines on the face of the statements that are not immediately impacting net position. They will over time as the money is paid. But right now it's just two new numbers that are grossing up your assets and grossing up the deferred inflow, so to say. So I think there's more info. So if we go to note 7 in the financials, we can kind of show you a little bit more detail about it. So that's going to be on page 40 of the financial statements. It's note 7. It's titled Leases.
Got it.
Okay, great. So now what this is doing, this is explaining to you kind of what those leases are and what they're for. The purpose of GASB 87, and it's showing you the discount rate used, because what you have to do is essentially calculate how much you're expected to receive over the life of the lease and discount it basically using current market conditions to come up with a present value. And that present value is 12.6 million as of June 30, 2021. And then you'll see that table. So what that table is showing you is the amount of money you are expected to receive in terms of the lease principal over the life of the lease, as well as interest revenue. So in total, it's 16 million, but then the actual lease principal itself is at 12.6 million. So that is all the leases that qualify under GASB 87 that are now disclosed and recorded on the financial statements. You've always had these leases. It's just they were previously recorded just as operating income and interest income as they came in. Now we're projecting what they're worth over kind of the life of the lease, and they're going on the financial statements. So that is the primary change to this year's packet. I don't know, Tim, did you want to add anything else to your background?
Just one item. If you look at page 26, there's a new line item that says lease interest. And if you compare that to page 40, where it shows lease interest on that page, each year we will record lease interest and it will hit the P&L, or it hit the or the statement of revenues and expenses under non-operating revenue expenses. So again, that's a new line item. Sometimes when you go through the interest areas or the interest incomes, that one's going to pop out as something a little different. So again, that's the result of GASB 87 also.
So on page 41, you also see the paragraph that talks about the regulated leases. So that's what I was talking about. Those leases that are regulated by the FAA are excluded from this accounting pronouncement. So those are not part of the new disclosures and the new items on the financial statements. Those are still reflected the way that they have been in the past. So really what this accounting pronouncement is doing is it's really more of a disclosure change. It's not necessarily having a change to operations or impacting any bottom lines over the course of the year. It's really just adding more information on obligations outstanding, either as the lessor or as the lessee for any government agency. So that is GASB 87 in a nutshell. Are there any questions about that before I move on?
Director Sable has a question involving page 4041.
Brendan and maybe Tim, given that this is a change in how we portray leases and breaking them into lease receivables on a present value basis, I guess, and lease interest on an annual financial statement. This lease interest, is this broken out separately as part of our income statement as opposed to how we've done it in the past? I guess I got a little confused there at some point, how we're treating lease interest.
Yeah, it is. Go ahead, Tim. I'm sorry.
Well, Director Sabo, again, if you look at page 26 of the income statement and you look under non-operating revenues and expenses. And it's got,
I don't see an income statement.
It's the statement of revenues and expenses and changes in net position is the title of the document.
Okay.
And down at the lower section, it says non-operating revenues and expenses.
Passenger facility charges. No,
Up here.
page 20, right here.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was on the wrong page.
26, non-operating revenues.
Okay, I'm there. Yeah, all right, go ahead.
And then the fourth item down is that investment in, or fifth item down, excuse me, is the lease interest. That again, it will now show it's part of the recognized income for those capital leases or the leases affected by GASB 87. So you will see an interest income related to those leases every year.
Okay, so, but it does it actually increase versus the way previous format? Does it actually increase the amount that we see on the bottom line for?
That's a good question. And actually what happens, Director Sabo, by mechanics, it is simply moving some of the revenue that used to be recognized under regular operating revenues. So for example, terminal leases and concessions, that includes the restaurant and Gifts and More, our store in the terminal. Those amounts actually just went down slightly, and it's now being part of it's being recognized as lease interest. So again, in total, the financial statements aren't changing. It's simply a recognition of or classification.
Okay, I understand what you said. It's just the detail is broken out differently, but the bottom line didn't change. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. That's exactly right. So, so any other questions on that before I jump to the next letter? All right. So the next letter in the document is I'm going to jump to page 58. It's the one that says Independent Auditors Report on Internal Control is at the top of it. Great. So this one will be quick this year. So this is a letter that is part of the packet that is, you'll hear different terminology: report on internal control, gas report, management letter, kind of findings letter. So this year, this letter is standard audit language. It just describes the two types of findings. If there ever was something that was significant or material that we had to adjust, or there was a deficiency or a weakness in the process, it would be disclosed here as a finding or a comment. This year, there is nothing in this letter that is outside the norm of standard audit language. There was nothing we came across that needed adjustment. Everything was very well organized and ready to go. And the only thing we had, I think, was a couple of years ago that was just a missed invoice. This year, nothing to report. So this letter is just standard audit language describing potential findings that could occur in the future. On the next page after that is going to be page 60. So now we're going to get into the letters having to do with some of the compliance audits that we do. Page 60, this is essentially the opinion letter having to do with the single audit. Single audit being the compliance audit having to do with the federal funding that government agencies receive. Any agency that receives in excess of $750,000 in any given year of federal funds is required to have a single audit. The airport receives much more than that every year. So this is something that's fairly normal for the district. What we're doing here is making sure that the federal dollars spent for the airport improvement program, and this year also there was a caveat with the CARES funding, is spent in accordance with federal regulations and the compliance supplement. Essentially what we're checking is that the money that has gone out is in accordance with that document. It's properly reported, it's properly supported, then everything is kind of as the FAA wants to see it. And then we are giving an opinion on that. So this opinion is also an unmodified opinion, meaning everything that we tested for this major program was in compliance based on our selections with the compliance supplement. So this is also just a kind of a standard opinion letter having to do with specifically the single audit this time. And this is a compliance opinion letter. There's nothing else in here that's out of the norm. So any questions on this one before I move on?
Go ahead.
Okay, great. The next letter that I'll point on now is going to talk about the PFC. So it's going to be page 68. Similar to kind of the single audit, the passenger facility charge program and the revenue has its own PFC guide, making sure that the money spent, money received is tracked properly, interest is tracked separately. Any expenses are in accordance with that PFC guide. So we sample the expenditures for the year. We make sure that the money is tracked separately and has a separate schedule. So this is also an opinion letter talking about the PFC guide, giving an unmodified opinion that nothing we tested was out of compliance with that guide and everything appeared properly recorded and kind of in accordance with the PFC audit guide. Also standard language here. What I will touch on for I know the PFC, kind of the balance has been something that we've talked about in the past. This year, I think we were able to kind of reconcile the cash accounts and kind of the PFC on unspent money closer than we have in the past, and something that we kind of have worked on each year. We've got it down to a much more manageable amount than it has been in years past. So I think it's something that we'll kind of keep working on moving forward to make sure that all those numbers are accurate. So that is all the letters and kind of the summary of the audit overall. Again, it was another successful year. You guys are one of our first ones that we get to get going on. First one's done. You guys like to early implement accounting pronouncements, so it's enjoyable to work with Tim and his team and Chris as well on the federal portion. And we appreciate being able to serve the district, and happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Let's start with Director Leffel, please.
Thank you. Brandon, I cannot tell you what a change has been since your firm came on board, and I really appreciate your thoroughness. I think Lisa and I both have had a really good understanding of your process and your steps and how it's going. And from a financial committee standpoint, Lisa and I are very grateful for the work that Tim and Chris and their teams did to prepare for this, because I think it really shows in the thoroughness of the audit. A couple things I just want to say. I think that by taking an early lead on GASB 87 and the fact that Brandon and his team were aware of it and ready to incorporate it and work with us on it, it really gives us a good head start for next year when it's required. And I'm very appreciative of that. And we were able to understand it. And I think that's important too as a board. This year was so different because of the CARES Act funding, which, it was one of those wonderful things, but it did come with its own challenges. So again, thanks to our team, and then thanks for Brandon and his team for really understanding it and getting in there on it. I understand the different issues with the different buckets, I'm going to call, of money that we have and the different funding sources. And I think that for the first time, since I've been on the board, I feel really comfortable that we have an audit team that is fully engaged with it and totally understands what they're auditing and can guide us a little bit in how we do it. And I'm totally appreciative of that. The PFCs, as we know, came up with a grand jury report. It's come up over and over and over again. And I understand it's something that goes back in time. It's a difference in reporting from federal government to what we do, to what the airlines do. There's all different ways of looking at it. So I really appreciate the work that everybody's doing to get that more in a line, so that for the general public looking in, it does not look like we have some nefarious activity at the airport. And then lastly, I sit on a lot of public boards, and I believe that we have just about the best grip on pension obligations of anyone around as a group. And that because of the way the audit was done, I think it's much more clear last year and this year. So Brandon, thank you for including everything that you did and taking the time to explain it. So from a financial committee aspect, Lisa and I fully support this as an adoption. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Director Sabo.
A very good presentation, Brendan, and we apologize for our technical difficulties. I always like looking at your face, but I did have a couple of just structural questions. We have a 5-year contract with you, I believe, and one of the values of that 5-year contract is continuity of the knowledge of our operation is acquired by your firm and at least some of the audit team. In this case of doing the audit this year, was the audit manager and maybe the audit senior, were they carryovers from prior years, and did they carry that knowledge forward into our audit?
Yeah, so I think we actually have been fortunate to really have pretty much the same team, I think, all 3 years. Jocelyn, who you guys may have met, has been the audit manager and the engagement. The first year, I think she actually ran it as the in charge, and now she's the manager. And the senior, her name is Sam. She's done it for 2 years now, and then I've been involved all 3 years. So we have had familiar faces all 3 years that have really, I think, helped us kind of further the understanding, and we look to continue doing that, for hopefully the next 2 years as well.
Okay, thank you. I'm being somewhat familiar with this audit process, I'm very gratified to hear that you have continuity in your team. Second question is, I think I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this, but it's a way to give a round of applause. How prepared was our financial staff for your entry into this year's audit process? How were the records, and how well prepared was the audit staff? The accounting staff.
Yeah, they're always very well prepared. We send them a request list probably 4 to 6 weeks in advance. It has kind of set due dates and timelines, and pretty much those dates always stay as we agreed to them previously. And there's nothing that kind of goes awry or off the rails. There's a lot of communication between Tim and Chris and their team and our team, and everything really stayed on schedule this year, exactly as we had discussed during the summer. So they were very well prepared.
Okay, glad to hear that, and applause to Tim and his team. Thanks.
Thank you for the report. Just a couple of quick questions. So we were found to be a going concern?
Yes, that's always the way it's worded is no. No, it means there is not a concern about your ability to exist for the next 12 months. It's just the language of that has been confusing for years. So there is not a concern about you to exist for the next 12 months. No.
Okay. Yeah, it always sounds so bad when you say it.
No, and the way it's worded, I know, even when we're writing it, I'm trying to think I'm not sure what this is saying either, but it's a positive thing. We'll just keep it at that. Okay.
Now you've done audits for other government agencies. I'm just curious how we compare to those. How are we doing as a going concern?
Yes, we do a variety of different agencies. We do different airports. We do cities, counties. So I would say, as far as in terms of audit readiness and kind of organization, I would say you guys are near the top of the list. Absolutely, about being able to get things turned around quickly and books closed. In terms of financial numbers, it's hard to compare to other really cities and counties. But as far as really, if you look at kind of balance sheet and you look at unrestricted net position and things of that nature. A lot of them are negative right now due strictly to pension and OPEB liabilities. Your guys' is lower than others. So I think you guys are, in a good spot. compared to other agencies, and we'll just kind of see what the future holds for the pension obligations. Really is what is the hot topic right now and very up in the air across the state.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time and effort in putting this together, and I echo Director Sabo's comment, thanking staff for making the process so streamlined for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Brandon, again, terrific presentation, and a big thank you for keeping what can be a cumbersome, complicated process as simple as possible for some of us non-CPA types. We appreciate the job that you do, and we really appreciate the job of our staff here at the airport, having everything in order and having it ready for you to take on in a timely manner. So again, thanks for the presentation, and we will look forward to staying in touch.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Okay. No action required. Just accept it. Just accept it.
Yeah, just accept it.
Did you want to hear what? No. Oh, good. Okay. Moving on to board committee reports, acceptance of.
Gary, I think you need to go out to the public on it.
Okay,
We were public.
there is no public, but we'll ask, is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll move on to board committee reports and acceptance of department reports. Again, I would like to clarify and ask the board to, if they have questions on the department reports, they are questions that will not be covered under any of the department reports that we'll have followed. So at this point, are there any questions other than what will be covered in the standing committees?
I guess I'm not sure. I never real clear on this.
Okay, let me try to reiterate for maybe the 89th time. If the question pertains to air service, hold the question. If the question pertains to finance, hold the question. Any topics carried by those two committees will be covered under their reports. So are your questions involving anything other than those two committees and the topics they cover?
No, but they regard finance.
Okay, then let's hold it until we get to finance.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, so we'll start with budget and finance. Director Leffel?
Mostly what we covered was the audit, and it was actually a pretty a pretty quick meeting because we went over the finances for the last month and the year to date, which of course is still a fairly new year. And we had nothing of significance to report. We also did discuss an upcoming lease modification, which we will cover later on in closed session. So there was nothing of any consequence. Everything was pretty cut and dried, and the year has started out extremely well for us over budget. I think Tim did a very conservative budget, particularly for revenue, and we've had some really nice upticks in things like parking and car rentals, which have helped us tremendously.
Thank you, Director. Director Miller, do you have any questions on finance?
I do not.
Okay, Director Sabo.
Yeah, just a couple quick ones. I guess it's Tim that he's still online. Given that our commercial aviation forecast, forecasted budget for that is substantially higher than actual, I was a little concerned as to why that occurred, given that our parking and our car rentals and that sort of thing, which are a fallout of our commercial aviation experiences, why those are so low compared to, so high compared to budget, and the actual forecast for our landing fees and stuff was so low compared to budget. So if that's at all understandable.
Absolutely understandable, Director Sabo. fortunate and a little unfortunate that when we look at the airline schedules that are published and available online, they forecast 8 months into the future. And when we prepare the audit or the budget, excuse me, when we prepare the budget, we're typically doing it 2 to 3 months in advance of when it's actually approved by the boards. We start the process fairly early. And this year, the airlines became, they were just very aggressive. They published everything they could online showing that they had flights available because they were anticipating a return to normal somewhat. The most aggressive was United. And so we used that as the foundation that was agreed upon, that we would use the actual published schedules by the airline as the foundation for landings, apron fees, RONs, and those types of things. That was a bit aggressive, ultimately. And you see that as United backed out on several of those flights that they had published. And again, by the time it reached the board for approval, they were already starting to modify their schedule, but we weren't in a position to redo the budget. As for the rental cars and the parking, when you're in a down market and you haven't seen an uptick yet, you're projecting what you think might happen. And the great news, we were wrong. The market return, what we received, or we achieved probably 75 or 80% of what we were hoping for airline revenues. In turn, employments were higher than we expected. And that translated into higher parking and rental cars. There's also something in the rental car business right now, and I always like to look at the numbers and kind of compare them and see what the differences are in percentages as a matter of trying to identify why. And I think with the rental cars, many of them closed down their local offices, except for the airport. And so that drives more of the customers in our community to come to the airport if they need to rent a car, because we're actually the only source, or one of the only sources in the area. So I think that's something that could happen on the rental cars. I think also you look for price adjustment in things. And I think also the rental car companies have raised their prices. In turns, that translates into more money for us. So those three items, thank goodness it wasn't the overestimate on the rental car and the parking. And fortunately, the airlines didn't hurt us too bad.
Okay, thank you, Tim. And as a kind of a follow-up to that, given that we have a lot more information now compared to when we were preparing the June 30th budget, are you and Mike planning on somewhat of a reforecasting of the balance of the fiscal year?
Director Sabo, Executive Director, and myself have been talking about that, and we're in process.
Have been talking, and then I didn't understand.
And we are in process of evaluating an amended budget.
All right, thank you. And then finally, this may be by the rules of the CARES Act and those other sources of federal funds, but why is it we didn't submit any request for reimbursement of expenses associated with CARES, for example?
Executive Director, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, quite simply, Director, we have traditionally used CARES Act money, and I'll use that inclusively of CRISA and ARP, to make ourselves whole. We have not collected back, we just made ourselves whole. We're in the process of evaluating that, and we'll likely be starting to take some of the back expenses that we have approved and reimburse ourselves.
Oh, we can do that. We can go back for a few months.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Nice job.
Okay, moving on to Air Service, Director Sabo, you want to start us off? We had a good meeting.
Well, we had a good meeting, and then obviously our employments are what they are, and we're very fortunate to have this return of many of the air carriers to Monterey, and it's quite an emphasis on our tourist destination. I guess what we're learning is we're going to have some seasonal adjustments by American and the adjustment by Allegiant that's off the Portland market. And but that's, I guess, kind of be expected that we're kind of opposite the rest of the country during the holiday season. Hopefully, always. And we had a good discussion of the kind of promotions that we're running via TV going forward in the football season. So you want to go for the rest here?
Sure. Actually,
Director Curcio, could you repeat what Director Sabo said if there's anything I should have heard?
okay, I'll try. Director Sabo said that the employments are up. We're fortunate to see that. We may see a little difference as due to a seasonal change, and all in all, what else? Well, I think that's the highlights. Yeah, that was pretty much the highlight of it. We are continuing to do extremely well on our employments, and the only downside as far as carriers was, and we'll know this already, is that Portland for now has been terminated and will be looked at again.
Okay, just for the record, that microphone does not appear to be working any better now.
I'm right on top of it. I can't get any closer.
No, I mean the one that Director Sabo's at.
I couldn't have gotten any closer either.
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you.
That is Director Level's microphone, so she probably has no problem. So anyway, just quickly, I want to touch base on the noise report, which was actually a pretty darn good report this time around. It's in your packet. We had only one issue from Pasadena. Normally, there's many more, so it does seem to be helping that most of the commercial airliners are coming over Highway 68 rather than over the subdivision. There were a couple of complaints during the air show where there were a couple of citizens concerned about how low the actually wasn't specifically, I believe it was a flyover by the Blue Angels that they made over on their way to San Francisco. Is that accurate, Director?
The Thunderbirds, yes.
What we said, okay, but we said Blue Angels in the meeting. That must be Thunderbirds.
We may have misspoken.
Okay,
Yeah.
so anyway, that was part of the complaint. I know I made the comment of all the times I've heard comments about the Thunderbirds and Blue Angels. This was the first time we ever had any negative comments about them. Everybody's normally thrilled to see them. The executive director mentioned we had a healthy crowd outside the fence when they came into the airport, observing them, and that all went well. I had a question when we went to the comments, and it was only because we had a rather lengthy comment reading about mask enforcement, and that no one reads the signs, suggestion have airport announce governmental employees masks off during business hours, other employees. Have someone or multiple airport employees enforcing all policy. We certainly have a limited amount that we can do in enforcement of the mask mandate. The car employees are not our employees, they're the car rental company's employees. But it is, I have seen that we do a job when we can with employees at the golf course, reminding folks to stay masked up and to stay masked up properly. I was reminded one day when I tried to get into the restaurant upstairs, and the lady at the counter reminded me that I had not only had my mask over my mouth, but it had to be over my nose as well. And so they are paying some attention. That's about it. We're happy to try to answer questions on air service Director Miller, do you have anything?
Just a couple comments and observations. One, yeah, I'm very pleased with the direction we seem to be going with new routes and expanding existing routes. The noise, just an observation, it was mainly the F-35, and that was, I have to agree, that's a much noisier plane than the F-16, but this is only once a year, so yeah, I think it was a good noise report. I have a request to consider, and I don't want to make the employment chart too busy, but FAA is really focused on the 2019-20 numbers, aren't they? When I mean, that seems to be the big conversation, sort of not counting the 2021 numbers so much. And just so we can see how we're doing historically when we were at our high point during the 19 to 20, if we could include that information going forward, that may be helpful seeing how our employments are rebounding or getting back to where we were before.
I think you'll find that in your board packet already in the 13-month rolling chart that we provide as part of the financial packet.
Are we talking about this one right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this includes the fiscal year 2021. So it'd be 20 to 21, 21 to, I don't think that counts to 19, does it?
Yeah, the difference there is the fiscal year versus the calendar year. FAA uses calendar year, you've chosen to track this by fiscal year. So there is a difference, there's a help to that.
Okay.
Let me see if we can correct something so it's a little clearer. You are right, FAA is discounting employment performance for 2020 as they calculate our entitlements, as they calculate everyone's entitlements. So you're correct.
Okay. But thank you. Yeah. And just what the director or Chair Curcio was talking about, the complaints, and we got a couple of them about masks. And I know this, we've dealt with this before, this association that everybody at the airport is an employee of the airport, but our employees are diligent about wearing their mask. I know you are certainly, even
extremely so. Yeah. No, all of the airport employees, airport district employees, are very diligent about wearing their masks. We practice that religiously. We believe that some of the complaints are from TSA employees because they are responsible ultimately to police that. And when they see, for instance, car rental agency employees not masked, they don't have the ability really to police that. So.
Oh, so you suspect these are TSA that are making these complaints to our? Okay,
so.
That's interesting.
It's irrespective of who. The fact is that anyone in this building, public areas of this building, is required to wear a mask at least through the end of January 2022. Don't know what TSA is going to do. They're going to be driven primarily by CDC. Public buildings, federally funded public buildings like this one, masks are still required. And that's the procedure that the county will do.
I suspected as much, but thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Director Luffel, any other questions for your service?
No, thank you. Good report.
Very good, thank you. Let's go to Airport Property Development Leases, Director Miller.
Well, we will soon be discussing this. We spent a lot of time reviewing the request for refinancing. We did talk about our scheduled fumigation at Fenton Keller and the extent of work that's needed to be done for that. coming up. We also talked about some proposals, would not appropriate to go into a lot of detail at this point, but yeah, we'd be happy to answer any questions, but a big part of our discussion will happen in closed session. We'll report out on that later.
I have nothing further to add. Director Ruffle, any questions?
No, I have none. Thank you.
And Director Sabo?
None.
Thank you. Moving on to ad hoc committees, I am sure there is nothing from local jurisdictions, is that correct? Okay. And
Chair Curcio, I want to point something out. I know that there's a request that we would have some type of a community group, but I want to point out to the public clearly that this is a standing committee for our board and it has been. We have not abandoned it. So there is a venue for local jurisdictions to meet with us and discuss mutual items of interest.
yes, Director Level, thank you for reminding us of that. It's a great timing to do so. Thank you.
That's all I had.
Okay, moving on to liaison representatives. Director Ruffle, anything from LAFCO?
Yes. On Monday, I participated in a closed session meeting with the third party that was hired to evaluate the numbers that were given to LAFCO and the public on the potential valuation of CalAm from both CalAm's viewpoint and from the viewpoint of the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District. So I zoomed in from here and we spent a little over an hour on that issue. I also chair the Finance Committee and we had a meeting on that a week ago. So I believe that we're poised on December 6th to have a very robust meeting on the topic of the two items with the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District and CalAm, one of which is, will the Water Peninsula the Water Management District be allowed to activate its latent powers, which are for water service and delivery. And number two, of whether or not it will move forward on the annexation of 58 lots of record that are currently in the CalAm service area in the Carmel Highlands area, and they're contingent upon the annexation into the Water Management District. There's a question on 5 other areas that CalAm services in the county, and the Water Management District has indicated that it has no interest in annexation of those 5 service areas. So that is one issue. I think another issue is the impact that this is going to have on the lack of property taxes, loss of property taxes on several of the districts, other districts. The one that, or 2 that appear to be most significant are the fire district, which will actually, excuse me, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Go ahead, Director.
Of whether or not the fire district loses about $140,000 a year. The Water Management District has replied that it will try to work with that district and and give them a portion of the money back. It's against the law for one district to give funds to another district. That's a gift of public funds. And so there are so many moving parts in this, and it appears that every time we touch one thing that something else pops up. So anyway, December 6th will be the full hearing on this issue at 4 o'clock.
So Director, I actually have a question, and if it's inappropriate, just say so, but someone asked me what the process was when a board member has to recuse. What is the process for replacing them? Because in the case of the county should have 2 voting members. How would one be replaced if one recuses?
So Supervisor Alejo, it was brought forth that he had accepted through a campaign contribution from a local attorney who also represents Cal-Am. So he was asked to recuse himself. During that process, as more people's campaign contributions were looked at, it appeared that another supervisor, who is an alternate, had accepted campaign contributions from a local group that has a pretty big stake in Measure J and in the outcome of water. And also, I believe, may have accepted contributions from at least one board member on the water management district. So that supervisor was also recused. So we have a group of 7, and what that did is it left us with a voting block of 6. And there is no other alternative for that supervisor's position.
So a 3-3 tie is a no.
I don't know. I will say that the county attorney who represents us has done a good job. Neither of the supervisors were sent any of the closed session materials for this last Monday meeting. And Supervisor Alejo did call in for the general meeting, but he did not go into the closed session with us. And neither one is privy to the materials that are given out in closed session. They're not in the discussion at all.
Thank you. Director.
Director Level, does anything that you covered in your report have an impact on the airport district such that we need to develop a statement to present at the December 6th meeting?
Director Sabo, our fiscal impact is less than $20 a year based on our share of the property tax that comes from the Cal-Am property. So we're not one of the districts that is impacted. If we wanted to, in solidarity with the other districts, we certainly could do that. But that, I think, that's up to you all. It's the top 15 districts. They took everyone that was impacted more than $5,000 a year, and I believe there were 15 of them. The really big losers are the county, Carmel Unified, Pacific Grove Unified, Monterey Peninsula Unified, and the fire district. Those were the biggest.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Okay, moving on, there's no regional taxi report. Director Sabo, anything from JMC?
Not too much. They installed the new executive director, Todd Monk, and so he's now running the show over there. They ran through the funding proposals for their 2022 transportation improvement program, and I'm pleased to report that while the Castroville Boulevard interchange and the Salinas Rail Extension program sucked up an awful lot of money, for 21, 22. There was still a significant allocation for Highway 68, and that was the environmental study. And then going out to 2023 and 24 is when the design for Highway 68 starts, and that's where we should be very involved and concerned about the extent of that design calls for roundabouts and the speed of the traffic coming in. Other than that, the Salinas Transit has gotten us a whole slug of money in the infrastructure bill, and they're redesigning the whole system to better emphasize transit down to South County, and they're doing a lot of significant changes to the way they provide transit here in Monterey County. So I think there's a lot to come forward. Other than that, there was nothing that directly impacted the airport. I'm done.
Thank you, Director. Any questions for Director Sabo? Seeing none, Director Miller, Special Districts.
We did not have a meeting, and as far as legislative, Director Leffel was going to take that over.
Very good. Go ahead, Director Leffel.
There's nothing to report. There have not been any new significant issues coming out of Sacramento that affect the districts. I think the bills that were passed earlier this year that the CSDA fought for on our behalf were all good. And I think the most significant, which really didn't impact us because we had participated in the CARES Act round ourselves, but the fact that there was money now allocated from what the state received, and the money was allocated out to some of our fellow special districts for their losses during the year of 2020. So that was actually significant, and I really believe that was a really good impact for all of us. But nothing right now.
Thank you, Director. Anything from MPAD?
We did have a meeting last Wednesday, had a public hearing on the regional housing needs analysis. That was preempted somewhat by the state. The methodology that was proposed by MPAD and sent to the state was rejected. The state submitted an alternate methodology that they want the region to use. And that methodology has to do with the assignment of the housing type, whether it's low income, affordable housing, moderate income. The state did not agree with the methodology that MPAD proposed. They submitted their own separate methodology. The public hearing was extensive and was forced a continuation of the meeting to a special meeting sometime early December. I don't know the date. So more to come on that, but there was a lot of interest in methodology and the assignment of those housing units.
Good. Any questions from the directors? Seeing none, we're going to go in. We're going to adjourn, and then we will go to closed session. Thank you. See you adjourn. 5 minutes. Hang on. Welcome back to open session. At this point, the only report we have from closed session is that we will be taking action on agenda item J1 on the regular agenda.
That's correct. Let me just define it for the audio. There was no reportable action taken in closed session.
Very good. Executive Director, you want to tee up J1?
Absolutely. We would ask that or recommend that the board approve the consent to mortgage of leasehold interest and authorization to execute related to the documents on behalf of the ground lease tenant, Maxi LLC. This is the self-storage facility on the northeast corner of the airport.
Very good. Before we go to the board, is there any member of the public who'd like to make comment on this item at this time? Seeing none, I would call for a motion on agenda item J1.
So moved.
Second. Discussion? Hearing none, Amanda, roll call vote.
Director Level,
Yes.
Director Sabo,
Yes.
Director Miller,
Yes.
Chair Curcio.
Yes. Motion passes. Thank you all. And at this point, I believe we have any discussion on future agenda items?
Yes.
Okay.
I would like to see the pension funding analysis be set at a date certain, like January meeting.
It will be at the December meeting.
It'll be at the December meeting. Okay, so let's reflect that. And then number two, I would like to see on the agenda a funding analysis for our master plan set for January.
We neglected to put the timetable in front of you, but if you recall the timetable, we will have a meeting in January that will cover 2 days.
That's a
worth
big
of-
spread.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Good. Yeah, maybe, I don't know whether it has to be on the future agenda items. So
It's not, it's already calendar.
Is it calendar?
Yes.
Okay. Put it on that big last thing. It's
All right,
calendar.
any other requests from board members, for future agenda items? Seeing none, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. So moved. Good. All in favor, indicate say aye. Aye.
Hi.
Good, thanks, everybody.
See you.